Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our Last Chance to Paint webinar with artist John Dyer, brought to you by Born Free. In this session, we'll be learning all about the Bornean rainforest. And as it is nearly Halloween as well, we are going to be learning about and painting bats, which is really exciting. And we'll also be learning about and painting the bats that John encountered during his travels, so the wrinkle-lipped bats. My name is Charlie and my colleague Laura is busy in the background helping to answer your questions and keeping things running smoothly. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Last Chance to Paint founder and creative partner. John, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi, welcome everybody to the Last Chance to Paint Borneo Bats Halloween special. We thought bats would be great for Halloween, and there's some interesting history around that. But I hope you're all going to be doing some amazing paintings today, or if you've got colored pencils, that's fine. But hopefully most of you will have some paints. You can paint along with me, and you are going to learn so much from Charlie at Born Free about wildlife and rainforests. And hopefully I will inspire you to really get some freedom into your artwork and to show you how quickly, creatively, energetically, and enthusiastically you can create a painting as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much, John. And you can also find all three of John's Last Chance to Paint creative schemes of work, including a module called Persons of the Forest, which looks more closely at the forests of Borneo. And we'll put those in the chat box for you now. So yeah, if you'd like to find out more about the rainforests of either Borneo, South America, or the African savannah, please do have a look at those. We'd love for you to be part of the journey. Now, in a moment, we are going to start painting. John's going to be creating his artwork using an online program called Procreate. So he's going to be painting on his iPad today, whereas you guys are painting on paper and using your paints. But it all works very much the same. As soon as John gets started, you're welcome to start and follow along with John. So please do take it away, John.
Fantastic. Well, there's a painting next to me on the easel here. This is actually was done at the Eden Project in a previous webinar, but it's based on Borneo, and you can see there are some bats floating around here. And Borneo is an incredible, incredible subject to paint. So yeah, as Charlie said, if you're not aware of lastchancetopaint.com, the big website, those schemes of work are all perfect for schools all around the world. And we've got teacher notes, free lesson plans, daily videos, a daily blog, lots of photography, and a painting of mine every day. So you can travel with your children and learn with me, and you can send in questions to me as well, and I will answer those, within sort of like 1 or 2 days typically. I'll get back to you so we can make it as live as you like. And then moving forward next year, there'll be another live expedition for you to join. So please sign up to Last Chance to Paint if you've only just come across this webinar. And we do 3 webinars like this every year too. So without further ado, let's get down to the bats. So what I'm going to do, as Charlie said, I've got quite an old iPad mini, just so you can see. It's not like the flashiest iPad in the world. That's what I travel with. I'm just using this and an Apple Pencil, and just using that app Procreate, which you can get for your schools on an educational discount as well. And they're a sponsor for one of our schemes of work. So I will now share let me share my screen, and then I'll walk you through putting together a lovely sunset bat painting. So
Amazing. So paints at the ready, everyone.
So we're just going to get the iPad sharing its screen. There we go. So here's my sheet of paper, as it were. So my digital sheet of paper. Now, what we're going to do is the bat exodus in Borneo. And all the bats come out at sunset. So we're going to start with some lovely sunset colors. And I start from the sky and work down. So we've got some oranges and some reds and maybe some yellows, and you can maybe mix some white in if you want, but just follow along with this. So if you've got a slightly wider brush or a sort of a flat brush rather than a round brush, that's ideal for a background. But if you haven't, just use what you've got. As they say with photographers, the best camera is the camera you've got on you. So the best brush is the brush you've got. I need a wide brush for this. There we go. So I'm going to put down some orange in the sky, and we're just going to about a third of the way down the painting. And then I'm going to add in some deeper reds just at the base here. just sort of blend it. And these two colors will mix together really beautifully on your paper. All right. And you'll see there's a little bit of white left there. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't need to be perfect. This is a painting. It's not a photograph. And it's all about the essence of the subject. And of course, the bats can't exist without their environment. So we've got to build the environment first, ready for our bats. I'm just going to put in some yellow in here as well. And
But it's
again,
a beautiful sunset, John. And an interesting fact about quite a lot of bat species actually is they're not all nocturnal. So some will come out at dusk, like the ones that you're going to paint today. But there are also some bats that fly around kind of during the daytime as well,
I
hunting for
think
different types of fruit.
actually, well, yeah, the fruit bats, of course. So I'm used to seeing bats in Cornwall, where I am. They come out in the evening, and in Europe, I tend to see them. And the ones, there were nearly between 2 and 3 million bats. 2 to 3 million bats come out of the cave that I experienced in Borneo. We're
That's
chosen.
incredible.
I mean, it's a huge number. And if you, there's, as we said, there's 3 schemes of work on Last Chance to Paint. One of them is called Person of the Forest, which looks at the island with the tropical rainforest of Borneo. It looks at the tribal people, the Penan people, who are fascinating, the orangutans, and the bats are featured. But we take you on one of those videos into the bat cave where they live, and also show you the bat exodus. I'll show you a little bit of footage of the bat exodus in a bit once we get this background.
Perfect. Really excited to see that, John. Brilliant. Fantastic.
The next thing we're going to do, once you've got your lovely sunset sky in, we're going to put in some cliffs. There's beautiful sort of limestone cliffs. It's a place in Borneo called Mulu, and it's very famed for its limestone, very sort of sharp limestone peaks. But in that limestone, you get these cliffs. And with limestone, the water erodes it to create these huge caves. And so we're going to do a cliff here, and then we're going to indicate a cave. So I'm using a purple. So you can mix together some blue and some red and some white. That will make a purple for you. And I'm just going to sketch in here a cliff shape. So this is basically exactly as the cliff looks in Borneo. But you can have any shape for the cliff, really. This is I'm doing it as I remember, as a spectator. So we're just going to put in some purples here, just flood the color across. And then we can
And
go.
does it matter what colour the cave is, John?
Not really. You could use a grey, you could use a blue, you could even make it pink or a really dark red. I mean, this is a painting, and of course the cliffs I was looking at, they weren't purple. They would have been a grey white for the limestone. But as an artist, I always try and emphasize colours, and the colours that I find in the environment really kind of fire my imagination. And so yeah, so it doesn't really matter. Just probably a different colour to the sunset. I'm using the purple because if you go to a color wheel, in fact, you can see it on my color wheel here. If you go opposite the reds and oranges, so if you go opposite sort of this sort of area, you get the blues. Yeah. So those are called complementary colors. So if I choose an orange here, the complementary to that would be directly opposite, which would be this deep blue. So if you're using a purpley color, you're basically working with a complementary color. That's a bit of a color theory for you there.
Amazing.
And they tend to work really well. Complementary colors tend to work really well together. So I'm just going to bring in some darker tones in here, and then we'll bring some green. So I'm just sketching in this is where the tree line would be, and then we're going to put some of the rainforest trees on top of there. And then there's a kind of a split. And this is the Deer Cave, that's the name of it, where the bats in Mulu, where they live. And this is a very dark patch where they kind of all will fly in, but they fly out at the top, but there's an entrance like this that you can actually get into. And then at the bottom of my painting, I'm going to put in some really deep greens, because this is going to be rainforest at this stage. Just looking over the canopy of some of the trees, because you get trees in a valley, and then you get this limestone, almost like a plateau above it, and this cave in between. So it all looks very rough at the moment, but if we get these basic colors down, it will start to really come together. And then within this dark green area, I can put in some patches of deeper green. That's slightly mucky. But again, to make a dark green, if you've got a green, you can just add some blue. If you don't have a green, then you want to take mainly yellow, and add a bit of blue. And if you want to make it muddier, add a tiny dot of red. So that's how we would mix that together. And the reason we use an iPad for the webinars is we've discovered it's so much clearer for everybody to follow along. And my painting process is on here is pretty much exactly like yours painting process. So this is just establishing a backdrop to our batty scene for Halloween. And that sky's a lovely pumpkin color as well, which also goes very well with Halloween.
It does.
Yeah.
It is brilliant. And also you can see the trees at the bottom. It actually shows how enormous this cave system is and how big the cliffs are. Now, Deer Cave is actually the largest cave chamber in the world. So it is the biggest kind of cave system of that kind. And as John said, there are around 3 million wrinkle-lipped bats living there. And every night those bats will appear to go hunting. So they'll leave the safety of the cave where they've been roosting during the daytime. They'll come out at dusk to go and find lots of tasty insects to eat.
Yeah, and it is quite incredible in the cave. And do watch our videos. But if you can, if you've got the time, make it a set of work and show the children one video a day. Start to spark their imagination. So then they do a really amazing final piece of artwork that's personal to them. It might be based on hornbills. It might be based on the Panan tribe. It might be another bat painting. It might be based on amazing insects that we discovered well, not discovered, but we saw in Borneo. So do that. But the cave is huge. It's vast, and the bats all cling to the ceiling, and the whole floor of the cave is covered in bat poo, bat guano. So it's quite an experience in this cave, and the bats, as Charlie said, they fly out of the cave, which we'll show you in a bit when Charlie thinks it's a good moment. And they fly from the cave system at Mulu, and then they fly across the rainforest all the way down to the coast, basically, catching insects on the way and continually leaving the guano or their droppings across the rainforest. So naturally creating this sort of fertile ecosystem. And there are a lot of bats. They almost look like a sort of plume of smoke as they come out of the top of the cave system. So this white I'm putting on here, if you've got a finer brush, you could use some white, and it's going to pick up the color underneath, which is fine. But this just indicates some of the trees, and quite a lot of rainforest trees. Sometimes they have quite pale stems, not all of them, but it's a way of us just picking out some of the trees. So I'm putting some trees up here on the edge of the cliff, and it's going to give a sense of scale to our painting. And then once we've established several trees in here, then we can put the canopy on in a moment. So, Charlie, how is everybody doing? Have we had any shouts of help for John's going too fast, or does everybody seem happy?
I think we have a few questions already, though, John. So
yeah,
we can go through some of those at the moment.
Yeah.
So we have a question already about the wrinkle-lipped bats themselves. So in a moment, you'll start painting them, which is really exciting. But they'd like to know how long a wrinkle-lipped bat actually lives for. Now, wrinkle-lipped bats, they can live for around 10 years, which is a really long time for such a small mammal. But other species of bats as well, so your larger bats, your flying foxes, for example, which can be kind of wingspans of around 1 meter across, they can live for up to 30 years. So a really, really long time, which is fantastic. And that was from Highfield School. So thank you, Highfield School.
Highfield School. I didn't know that, actually. So
Oh, yes. So yeah, they're really long-lived animals, even though they are very small, which is quite unusual for such small animals, but absolutely exciting. We have had a couple of requests for slowing down. So actually, maybe, John, we could show the clip of those bats leaving the cave, which is a really amazing thing to be able to see.
Yeah, I'll do that.
We'll pause for a few minutes, we'll share the clip, and we can answer some more questions as well.
We are watching a spectacle of bats coming out of their cave, and you can see them in the very distance, thousands of them coming out in a massive spiral to protect themselves from a bat hawk, which we have also seen trap on, which is really exciting, and it's been a wonderful evening because of it.
I think the bats will really need one because it's
Hopefully you've got an idea of how the bats stream out of this cave system. So they come out the top as if it's smoke, almost. So we can do them coming out of the top or coming out of the cave entrance. They would appear from both, but at that stage, and there's just literally millions of them. They go on for sort of 45 minutes an hour, just streaming out of the cave at dusk. So it's quite a sight. And I said the whole time, it's fertilizing the rainforest system and also keeping the insect population in check, because if they weren't doing that, you'd get too many of one species of insect, and then the insects would not thrive because they wouldn't find enough food for themselves. And so that's part of the balance of the ecosystem. It's a very interesting and very delicately constructed thing, which is called planet Earth, basically, and we're part of it, which is why we have to be careful too.
Could you just tell us a little bit more about that clip, John? Because you were there in person, you saw those bats coming out that cave. Each of those tiny little dots in that video, they were all individual bats. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was like being there and experiencing that?
Yeah, so that each one of those little kind of Lego bricks, probably, that you saw, each one's a bat, and they fly. They all stream out literally as the sun goes down at dusk. So you can time this. So if you want to go, if you happen to be in that part of Borneo, you can trek through the rainforest, very easily done, and they will literally come out on cue, like a theatre performance. It's timed, I wouldn't say to the minute, but within 10 minutes or so, and then they will all come out. And it's called the Bat Exodus. These are all wrinkle-lipped bats from Borneo. And it is extraordinary because you have the background chatter and hum and noise of the rainforest with hornbills and crickets and birds, and so it feels very evocative, especially as the light is going down. So in the video clip, you saw my eldest daughter, Martha Lily, who you'll meet on 2 of the expeditions, Borneo and the Amazon rainforest, and she presents things very well. And she was really inspired by this. She's a musician, so she's not a wildlife expert, but it is extraordinary. And the way they come out and they spiral is interesting, because they could just come out in a straight line, but they deliberately spiral like a corkscrew to try and confuse the bat hawk, which you saw in that clip. And the bat hawks know when they're going to come out, and the bat hawks will be waiting for those bats, and then they'll just pick off a bat for their supper. And again, that's a really important part of the ecosystem. So what will happen is if a bat is older or less well or less able for some reason, it's likely not to be able to keep up with the general corkscrew formation of the bats, which might mean it's a bit of an outlier. So in terms of nature and ecology, if you've got an outlier that's not as strong, that's not doing as well, if that bat then goes forward to have many baby bats, then those bats will also be less strong. So the way nature tends to work is, in this case, the bat hawks will come in and they will pick off the weaker bats, or the bats that haven't kept in the corkscrew, probably because they can't fly fast or they've not worked it out. So that keeps the bat genetics really healthy. It lowers the bat numbers a little bit, obviously, otherwise there'd be too many bats for the insect population. And like we said, the bats eat the insects, so there aren't too many insects for the food they find in the rainforest. And immediately you can start to see this lovely sort of nature is in balance, this circular economy of energy and nature and genetics. It's quite amazing. And then, of course, you've got, as the sun goes down, you're suddenly plunged into pitch black in the rainforest, and you're a good half an hour trek back to base where you're going to be sleeping. And then there's 2 ways back in Borneo from where we were with the Bat Exodus. You can either go on the nice lit boardwalk, which is very easy, and you see the most remarkable insects at night as well, because a lot of animals and insects will come out at night. And you kind of almost see more amphibians and huge kind of hairy caterpillars. You'll see some in our videos if you do. I mean, literally huge, like as big as this iPad mini in length. I mean, big old creatures. But of course, I was with Robin Hanbury Tennyson, the 20th century world's greatest explorer, and he's done so many amazing things. And Robin, who's in his late 80s now, he took us on a trek deep through the rainforest. He wasn't going to do the boardwalk. So off we set straight into the pitch black of the rainforest, with all the hum and the sound and the amphibians croaking and the going on. So it's everything you would imagine a rainforest or a jungle would be at that stage. And I find it extraordinary. It puts your adrenaline right up the top, but it's not in a bad way. It's in an exciting way. And yeah, there's a lot to love about the rainforest. It's a very lovely environment to experience if you care, have the right knowledge. So yeah, but the bats, extraordinary.
Awesome. No, thanks, John. Talking of the rainforest, obviously it's a really important habitat, not only for the bats, but also a huge variety of different plants, different animals. As you said, all those different amazing insects and amphibians that you find in those forests. Now, our rainforests are thought to hold at least 2/3 of the plant species found on the planet and almost half its wildlife. So rainforests are incredibly important habitats. They are so biodiverse, meaning that they have lots and lots of different types of species, lots and lots of different animals living there. But they're also really important for us. So, for example, our rainforests produce a huge amount of oxygen, which is why sometimes they're known as the lungs of the earth. So they produce around 20% of all the oxygen on the planet. So that is around 1 in every 5 breaths you take. So if you take 5 breaths in now, nice, slow, deep breaths, you can thank one of those. You can thank the rainforest for one of those breaths, which is incredible. So they're not only really important for wildlife, but they're also really important for people. And the Borneo rainforest in particular, they are the oldest rainforest in the world. We think they're around 130 million years old. And Borneo, as John said earlier, is a big island. And that island is actually made up of multiple different countries. So Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia are all found on that one island, which has this incredible rainforest. And there's lots of species in the Bornean rainforest that are found nowhere else on Earth. So that includes animals such as the Bornean orangutan, which John also saw during his visit to Borneo, which you can see as part of the Last Chance to Paint series. The Bornean pygmy elephant, which is a smaller subspecies of the Asian elephant. The Sunda clouded leopard, Sumatran rhinoceros, and also proboscis monkeys and the Hose's palm civet. Now, those animals are found nowhere else on Earth. They're only found in Borneo and in those amazing, incredible, special and ancient rainforests. And also, as well as that, there's also some really cool plants. It's not just animals that are amazing. There are some brilliant plants there as well, including one that you might have heard of, you might not have, which is called the corpse flower. Now, the corpse flower is one of the largest flowers in the world. It's around 1 meter across, but instead of smelling beautiful and having a lovely perfume, it actually smells like rotten meat. And that is because its pollinators are flies, and those flies are attracted to that smell of dead meat, and they don't find a dead animal there. They actually find the flower and they pollinate the flower as they're trying to find food, looking in this giant corpse flower. And if you look at them online, they're a big, giant red and white spotted flower. They are absolutely incredible. And these rainforests are so important. But sadly, around 30% of the rainforest in Borneo has been lost in just the last 40 years. And they face a huge number of threats. And those threats come from lots of different places. So one of those threats is cutting down of trees, deforestation for timber, but also even just for using for paper pulp. And as well, if in your class you've got some fans of things like biscuits and frozen pizzas and chocolate, ice cream, even different types of cereal, those things all have an ingredient a lot of the time called palm oil. Now, palm oil is an oil that comes from the oil palm tree. And it's a very useful oil. It's used in a lot of things, like I said, those pizzas, those chocolates, also things like soap and toothpaste. And most of the palm oil in the world, so around 85%, is grown in Indonesia and Malaysia, so those countries that are on the island of Borneo. And in order to meet the demand for palm oil, so we're using more and more palm oil as a human species every single year, rainforest is being cut down to make way for those plantations. Now, plantations of palm oil, they are known as a monocrop. So it's just the palm oil trees. There's no other plants, there's no other trees around in those plantations. And that makes it really difficult for animals to survive because there's no variety, there's no different fruits, there's not that variety of insects. So animals, including bats, including the orangutan, they really struggle to survive, and it means there's less space for them to find food, to find shelter, and to survive. So it's a really important thing to make sure that if you're buying certain products or if you're looking at certain things, seeing if you can find labels that have responsible or sustainably sourced palm oil. And that is palm oil that's been sourced without destruction of the rainforest. So rather than cutting down more trees, we're using palm oil that's already there. So it's just one small thing you can do to help protect the rainforests. But they do face lots and lots of threats. But John, tell me a little bit more about your painting. This looks beautiful.
Yeah, just before I do that, the palm oil is a huge issue, actually. So when you follow the full person of the forest, which means orangutan, that's literally its translation. Orangutan means person of the forest. Project on Last Chance to Paint, you'll meet some of the orangutans who've been displaced through palm oil, and there's very difficult stories around that. Whilst I was there in Borneo, there was literally rainforest falling out of the sky the whole time when I was with the orangutans, clumps of burnt leaves just literally coming out of the sky. You'll see us wearing face masks at some point during the video with the orangutans. Now, this was before the pandemic, before COVID. We were wearing them because of the amount of smoke of burning of virgin rainforest to put in new palm oil plantations. And this has taken the orangutan to be a critically endangered species. So in your lifetime, we could lose orangutans in the wild. But with the work of Born Free, who helps to support the Orangutan Foundation, hopefully that won't happen. But as Charlie said, we all need to be part of the change so that our world can stay as well as it can be. And we do deserve our place in the world. We are part of the natural ecosystem. It's just we do have technologies and habits that put us out of balance with it. So anyway, back to the painting. So what I've done is I've put some shadows, some purples on some of the trees in the foreground against that. At the bottom of my painting, I've put some purples just to sort of indicate where there might be a shadow. I've put some more detailing on the limestone cliffs, picking out some of the white of the limestone and some darker areas and some greys. And if you want to mix a grey, if you don't have one, you might have black paint, in which case just mix, just take mainly white and put a little bit of black with it. If you don't have black paint, then what you want to take is a bit of blue, a bit of red and a bit of yellow, and mix that into mainly white, and then that will make you a grey. And if it comes out brown, you've got too much blue and yellow and not enough, you've got too much red and yellow and not enough blue in it. But you can experiment with that, but you can easily make a grey with your paints if you want one. And I'm at the stage now on this background where we can start to bring the bats in. So this is basically sunset in my painting. And when we think we're ready for the bats, we can do that. But Charlie, do they need another bit of a pause before we embark on the bats? How are we doing?
A little pause if that's okay, but I have some questions that we can go through whilst we're letting everyone catch up.
Yes.
So we have questions from West Lodge School in Sidcup. They are actually studying your artwork, John, which is really exciting.
Hi, West Lodge School.
So the children would like to know what's been your favourite project so far, and also what's your favourite animal, if that's okay.
Oh, it's just so hard. It's so hard to say. So I'm going to say that my favourite animal to paint was the 2 northern white rhino in Kenya. I think I said that in the last webinar too, but to have the privilege of painting the very last 2 animals of a subspecies is quite emotional. I found it really emotional. You'll hear it in my voice. I'm like almost in tears at one stage because we are going to lose that subspecies, and that's all happened in the last 30 years. They were thriving in the wild, and now we have two who are female and both related to each other. But a fantastic animal to paint. I do encourage you to do the Precious Africa project as well, where you'll meet the last two northern white rhino with me and lots of other animals too. And in many ways, it's hard to pick between the three projects I've done in conjunction with Born Free, the Amazon rainforest, Borneo, and Kenya, because they're so astoundingly different, although they all have the same issues, as it were, with wildlife being impacted by us, by human beings. So that sort of like human wildlife conflict is an issue. It's very hard for me to choose one, but if I had to put my finger on one and say which was my favorite of all of them, I think I'm going to say Kenya, because when you go to the rainforest, which is extraordinary, whether it's in the Amazon or Borneo, and I've also done Costa Rica before, and which is really extraordinary. You hear the animals. You very rarely see them because you can't really see much more than a meter or two in front of you anyway. Most of the life is in the canopy, which is literally hundreds of feet up in the air, but you hear them and it's extraordinary. But if you want to see animals, then Kenya or Africa they're just there. Like if you took a tub of toy elephants and rhinos and hyenas and just tip them out on a play mat to play with as a young child, it's pretty much what Kenya looked like. They're just all there, and so different. The forms are so different when you compare an elephant to a female lion, to a warthog, to a flamingo. It's just extraordinary. The diversity of life was extraordinary, and I really enjoyed seeing all those animals, and hopefully you will enjoy traveling with me retrospectively through that project. I think you'll really love it. I loved it.
Great projects, aren't they, John? So yeah, fantastic. So we have got those links for you in the chat box if you did want to look at those later on, teachers. But as John was saying as well, rainforest, it's really tricky to see animals, and that is because most of the wildlife actually lives high up in the trees in the canopy. So you're very unlikely to see very many animals on the floor. 90% of the life is found at the very tops of the trees, where it's nice and bright and sunny, and there's loads of fruit for animals, including flying foxes, to eat. I'll take one more question and we can then carry on a little bit more with painting, and we will have time for more questions later on, so don't worry if we don't get to you guys straight away. So I have a question from St Anne's RC Primary School. How long have you been painting for, and what advice do you have for anyone who would like to be an artist when they grow up?
Well, hi, St Anne's Primary School. I've been painting my whole life, as hopefully everybody in watching this has been painting in some way, or drawing, or crayoning, or colouring. I just never stopped. I found great joy in it. So whenever I had a school project around a topic, whether it was like Henry VIII, or whether it was around the Antarctic, or whatever it was, I would find great joy in illustrating it, painting my subject, or even if it was a diagram in the science thing, I'd really go to town on the art. So I knew I was really drawn to visual things, so I kept doing that. And then I did my what you would do, GCSEs and then A levels, and I kept art going through as a thread there. Then I decided I want to be involved creatively in the arts. So I did a 1-year foundation course where you do a bit of everything within the visual arts, from sculpture to printmaking, to graphic design, to fashion, to knitting things, to painting, doing life drawing, which is doing like charcoal drawings of the human body, everything. And then decided I like to do graphic design, which is the study of letter forms and print, and websites and photography, but with a view that I'd like to use that to help with my painting, because I was never going to let anybody teach me to paint, because I think painting should come from one's heart and soul, and there's no right or wrong way of doing it. You can certainly improve your own personal technique, like you can improve your own handwriting. However, I didn't want to copy anybody, and I didn't want anybody to teach me to be them. I just wanted to do my painting, which is what I did. So I supported that through graphic design work, and then I worked for nearly a decade at what is now Falmouth University, teaching across loads of the arts courses as well. But I've just always done it. I've loved it. Always traveled with a sketchbook, always had my camera around my neck, always like photographed like mushrooms and collected beetles, and basically was a natural sort of, zoologist, biologist, but went into the arts route.
Amazing. So yeah, just if you're passionate about something, if you love doing something, just carry on, keep practicing, keep trying.
Whatever that is, whether that's music or whether it's mathematics or whether it's building things, just if it's your passion, life will work out around it really well. So just follow what makes you happy.
Fantastic. Okay, John, I think we can slowly start adding in some bats. And as we said, it is our Halloween special. And there is actually a reason that bats are associated with Halloween. So many years ago, around 2000 years ago, the Celts here in the UK, they held a festival on the 31st of October, so when we hold our Halloween. And this was called the Samhain Festival. Now, during the Samhain Festival, Celts would build these enormous bonfires. And as you might have noticed, sometimes if you have a light on when it's dark outside, you might notice that that light attracts insects. Now that's because the insects are trying to navigate by the moon, but they get confused and can get drawn to our own light. So this would happen with the bonfire as well. Lots and lots of insects would be drawn to this bonfire, and the bats would then feast on those insects. They would come and they would snap up as many as they could so they could put on lots of weight before hibernating over winter. And the Celts believed that those bats were spirits that were up to mischief, up to no good. And so that's why bats are so heavily associated with Halloween. It's a really ancient thing that's been passed down through stories and generations, which is absolutely amazing.
I love that. I didn't know that story. I love that. It's not a story. I love the fact that that's what that association with the bats is. So, which is great. Now, look, I'm just putting some bats in coming out of the cave here. So you can, and I'll do a slightly bigger bat in a minute, but I'm just going to do this sort of like funnel of smaller bats because I'm not sure how far everybody will get. But you can literally just do almost like little sort of like V shapes, or almost like a flattened sort of W, because the wings are very much, well, I'll draw a slightly bigger one in the top left-hand corner here, just to illustrate. If I zoom in, I'm just going to zoom the screen in like this temporarily, and then I'll put it back to the full view, because I know that schools don't generally like it when I do this, but just for the sake of showing the bat shape here. So the bats will have a central sort of body and head. So, and they look a bit like this, and the wrinkled lip bats will have ears like that. And then they'll have a body, which would be like this. So this is a larger one. I'm not necessarily suggesting you do it this detailed on your painting at the moment, but just want you to see roughly how bats go together, because it will help you get the essence of it. And then you have these legs and little claws at the back here. This is how they hang to the ceiling. And it's very interesting that bats, in their relaxed state, in the relaxed state for their feet grasp. That is the relaxed state for a bat foot. So when it's sleeping, it doesn't have to think about grasping anything, because that's its relaxed state, is for the foot to be in a clasped mode, which is quite amazing. Then they have these arms, which come down like this, and they go up like that and like that. So this would almost be like the thumb up there. So you can see how evolution has sort of changed forms of animals into other forms, but kind of kept this sort of similar look. And then you get this very classic, this very sort of typical, sort of like sort of Dracula kind of thing here, where you get these bat flaps like that, which go down, and then they come down to the tail here. So, and I'm doing it like this just because I'm aware when I do my even bigger one in a minute, we might start to run short of time. So it goes like that, and then like that. And
you can really see, John, in this part of your painting, those amazing hands that
yes,
bat have. So the wings are actually essentially modified hands, modified fingers, and the ancient, or the scientific name for bats actually translates as hand wing. So you can see at the top, there's that tiny little spine that would have been the thumb, and then the longer fingers, which have those flaps of skin stretched out between them, which become wings. So bats are the only true flying mammal. So you might have heard of other animals like the flying squirrel, for example, or gliders. They can't actually fly, they can only glide between trees, but bats can actually take flight. And as John said, they spend a lot of their time upside down because their feet in their relaxed state are actually clenched so they can hold onto the rocks where they're roosting. And they will hang upside down mostly because of ease to then get flying again. So they'll hang upside down, and then when they're ready to go again, they will open their feet and drop, and that means they can take flight really easily. And they'll do lots of things upside down. They'll even give birth and feed their young upside down whilst hanging on the roof of a cave or a building, which is incredible.
Yeah, and what we noticed was that hanging on the roof of a cave keeps them safe, and they will cluster together for safety as well, because they could potentially still be attacked. But when a poorly bat who's tired ends up on the floor of the cave, it will quickly get attacked and then consumed, and its energy, it will go back through the ecosystem. So we saw bats in the cave that were being eaten by crickets, of all things. Literally, they'll be attacked by anything down there, or snakes, or soft-skinned turtles who also live in the caves. It's quite an extraordinary ecosystem that's broadly fed by the insects on the rainforest that the bats capture, and then they release all of this fertile stuff with the guano that sort of keeps this ecosystem alive. And then bats do get poorly and they will fall off, or they'll get hurt, and then they go into the ecosystem of the cave itself. So there we go. And I might do a bigger bat in a minute, but let's just focus on this sort of like spiral. So you can do these bats however you like, but if you sort of do them as basically as like, I'll just zoom in again. So if you just basically do that, that indicates a bat, and you can put a little head on it if you want a tail, but that's what we're going to do to build up this like funnel of bats going up. It's as simple as that. These little sort of little upside down W's or M's or little zigzags, however you think they should be. And some would be closer to us, some further away. And they just stream out of the cave. So you're going to get a very evocative painting at the end of this. And there'll be millions. And then some of them, you can just literally put little dots on, because they're ones that are further away. And this will just all help to add to your painting. And there's no right or wrong here, obviously. You just hopefully have a little bit of fun putting your sort of like typical sort of Batman sort of like images on here. So you can be doing that. And Charlie, do you want me to draw another bigger bat, or do you think that that's okay for bat? How do you think? What do you think? What's the votes from the schools?
No, I think what we can do is we can share where you actually saw the bats on a map, if that's okay.
Of course,
That just gives people a little chance to catch up, and also we can answer some questions about where you visited in Borneo. Brilliant.
Right, so this is Google Earth, and in the middle of our map, you'll see there's the United Kingdom, where probably most of you are, although there might be people from other locations. Just before I go to Borneo, just want to point out something. I did this on the last webinar. You always see planet Earth from this direction, but if we just turn the Earth round, you'll see why. Because literally half the planet is just ocean. I just think that's worth pointing out how important the oceans are, and we will be doing an ocean project at some stage. Anyway, back to the United Kingdom, and if I zoom in a little bit, then you can see we've got the labels on here, so you can see the countries. To get to Borneo, we're going to go all the way around here, all the way down here, and then we're going to go past India. And then you're going to see Thailand, and then down towards the bottom, you've got Singapore, and then you can see there's Jakarta, and the big island just above and to the right of where you've got the city of Jakarta. This is the island of Borneo. So this is Borneo. And the projects, so the bats were up at the top. Can you see where it says Brunei up there? Well, Mulu is literally on the border with Brunei. And this is quite interesting. Let me just show you this. So Mulu is here. Can you see where it says, it's slightly where it says Gunung Mulu National Park. So that is the limestone escarpments and the very full mountainous areas of Mulu. So that's now being designated as a national park, a reserve. And the reason is, if we come in here, you can see all this rainforest, it's all just plantations, basically.
Oh, wow.
This is,
So that's that palm oil that we were talking about earlier. Is that right, John?
yes, exactly. So this all used to be rainforest. So when my very good friend Robin Hanbury-Tennyson, who you'll meet in the Amazon and the Borneo expeditions, when he first went to Borneo, all of this was rainforest. But the rainforest, literally, it's been cut down in Malaysia. This is all farmed or degraded land until you get to Brunei. And then you see the texture changes, and this is all virgin rainforest. So on the border with Brunei, it then starts to deteriorate really rapidly into sort of cut down, and then it turns into all these plantations. Anyway.
Wow. That's really shocking, isn't it? And that's part of that 30% of rainforest that's already been lost. And so it's great to see that actually Gunung Mulu is now a national park, because hopefully it means that those trees and that forest is being protected.
Yeah, it will do. But so much of the rainforest in Borneo has been lost. In fact, virtually the whole island's been deforested. And it's quite shocking. Now, in the south of Borneo, so we had to do multiple sort of flights around in Kalimantan. This is where the orangutans are, in the very south of the island. I'm just hesitating to find the exact location. In fact, it's here. Here we are. So we went into Pangkalamban, which is the sort of like local large town, and then the orangutans are in this national park, in the Tanjung Puting National Park. They're in there. And again, if this wasn't designated a national park, it all turns into this.
So that's all just one tree. So that's the palm oil plantation. So it's all just rows upon rows upon rows of just palm oil. And you can see there, they're all in very neat rows. It's a very barren landscape. While it looks like it's obviously lots of trees, it's all one species. So it just means that wildlife can really struggle to survive. And it's essentially a desert, an ecological desert. Even though there's lots of trees there, wildlife cannot survive because they're so used to, and they've adapted and evolved to live in those complicated biodiverse rainforests. So it's really, really important that we help protect rainforests. So as well as palm oil, which I spoke about earlier, looking to see if you can buy products that have sustainably sourced or deforestation free palm oil. You can do other things as well to help protect the rainforest. And it's really important that we do look after the rainforest. Even though they're miles away, it might feel like we can't really do a huge amount to look after them, but we really can. So if you own something at home like a tablet, any form of electronic games console, even things like your TV and kind of charging cables, they are full of lots and lots of precious metals that help make those electronic items work. Now, at the end of your electronics life, they do break, and they do get to the end of their life, and they do need replacing. But what you can do to help protect rainforests is, rather than throwing those electronic items away, putting them into the bin, where those items are then sent to landfill, what you can do instead is you can recycle your electronics, because then what happens is all the metals in those tablets, in those wires, are then able to be used again. And a lot of the metals that we use in electronic items, they actually were originally mined from areas like the rainforest. So by reusing those metals again and keeping them in the system, it means we aren't having to dig up even more rainforest. So recycling your electronics is an absolutely huge one. It's a really important one for helping keeping our rainforests and other habitats safe and healthy. And another thing as well, like I said, a lot of the trees that are cut down in Borneo are just simply mulched up and used for paper pulp. So what you can do is use recycled paper, and also put your used paper in the recycling as well, so then that gets used again, and we don't have to keep cutting down more and more trees just to make our paper. So lots and lots of little things that you can do to help protect the rainforest and the wider environment.
And there are around 2 billion children on planet Earth, so you do have a voice. So if every young person just takes a few steps to be just a little gentler on planet Earth, it has a huge impact. And if you influence your families, it has an even bigger impact. And over time, things will heal. And as Charlie says, you know, recycling, sending your electronic goods that have been used to the proper places, not only does it help our planet, but it actually keeps the cost of our next item down as well, because it's much cheaper to get the precious metals out of an old phone than it is to go and dig them up somewhere. So
it's a win-win, really, isn't it?
Is, yeah, and that's we need to move to circular economy. So, and you see that a lot in laptops now, which is very good. A lot of them are made of aluminium, which is great. So it's a perpetually recyclable material. So a laptop will be cast in aluminium, a lot of them, not all of them. And then at the end of life, it will go back. That aluminium will be melted down and made into a new laptop. So it's completely circular use of the material. It's not like that laptop then goes off to become a gatepost, which then goes off to become nothing at all. So it's trying to find circular use of our raw materials. And that's the great challenge we have, really. But there's some really good examples. Now, I have just put in something that's not a bat. I've put in the bat hawk, who is chasing the bats, who will take one of them out, because I'm aware we don't have long left. And I can just make this chap rather fun by giving him some eyes and on here. So in a very sort of naive way, but it's actually quite fun in a painting, just as I said, just to get the essence of that. And then we've got a whole scene, and I'm also going to put in on here, I'll leave the whole picture up. So I'm going to put a hornbill in, because hornbills are just the most amazingly large and spectacular birds. So I'm just going to put hornbill, and they're very, very much part of the Borneo system, because nothing lives in isolation. It all has to have its support system around it, and they've got these lovely long tails. They sound incredible, and when you hear their wings whooshing overhead through the canopy, it's just like, what is that? You know, they are large birds, and they have these wonderful beaks as well. So Charlie, how long do we have on the webinar now?
We've got around 15-20 minutes left, so we'll make sure we get through a few more of your questions as well whilst John is painting that lovely hornbill. So we've got a few kind of quick answer questions, John. So we've got why do you like to paint wildlife? What is your favourite wildlife to paint? We've already talked about the northern white rhino.
I can choose another one though. Let's say orangutans.
Oh yeah, orangutan this time. Lovely.
Orangutans are great to paint because they're 97% the same as you and I genetically, but their arms and their legs are so bendy that you can literally just paint a sort of an orange square and then legs at any shape or angle you like, and it's kind of almost an orangutan. And yeah, they're lovely. They're lovely to paint.
Fantastic. So just wildlife in general, you just love painting it because it's amazing shapes, brilliant colours, but also just amazing to get connected to as well.
It is. It's that connection. What I discovered over the years of painting amazing plants and staple foods and wildlife and just amazing environments is that as you paint and draw it, as I hope is happening today with the children on this webinar, you do start to connect to it because you have long enough to look at it, to think about it, to ask questions. It could be that you're looking at reference, say, for an elephant in a reference book, but you make your own painting or drawing of that elephant. But because you're spending time considering it, you start to make a bond to it, and then you start to realize that actually you rather like elephants, because you must do, because you chose that as a subject. Which is why I'm putting a bat hawk and a hornbill in here, because it's not everybody will relate to the bat, and with our major schemes of work on Last Chance to Paint, there are so many aspects each child individually might bond to. But yeah, I've learned so much going in as a naive person, somebody that has no expert knowledge, and it's lovely not being an expert, because it's like being a sponge. You can just suck up all this information. So yeah, I really, really enjoy it from a learning point of view.
I've got another couple of questions. So we've got LDSM School. I know the answer to this one, I think, but they would like to know, what is the favourite painting you have ever painted? Is your current favourite painting, John, the one that you're doing at the moment?
Yes. But the way it works with an artist is that if you did a painting, say 3 years ago, and that was your favourite painting, and then every day after that, they've not been your favourite paintings, that would get kind of a bit disappointing. So for me, the whole point of doing another painting is to try something new. And whether it goes right or whether it goes wrong, and those are very debatable, what does that even mean? You're going through a process. So every painting I do is my favorite because that's why I'm doing it. And it's lovely. And I've watched other artists, quite well-known artists, make terrible mistakes with their paintings. And they learn from it. And then they find that they've enjoyed it even more because they've got a richer canvas out of it or richer painting. So yeah, my favorite painting today is the one we're doing together. This is my favorite painting.
Brilliant. So always your latest piece of artwork is your favorite one.
Always.
Brilliant.
I'm going to pop some
Fantastic.
butterflies in as well, just so people know what I'm doing here.
Oh, fantastic. I love that hornbill, John. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just lovely because the bats cannot exist. And that's what Last Chance to Paint tries to do. It tries to give you everything. It tries to say, we're not just doing bats, we're doing the ecosystem, and we're also doing the people that live in that ecosystem. So we're doing the plants and the insects. So we try and do as much as we can. And so that hence me putting in some insects, because some of these like this lovely red butterfly from Borneo that I'm doing, maybe some of these are supper for the bats. And that's great, because otherwise there'd be too many caterpillars, and caterpillars would eat too many of the rainforest trees, and then the rainforest would be in desperate state. You can see how it's all in balance and how carefully balanced it is. So that's why I'm just putting in a few other things. But the children don't feel you have to put all these extra elements in. You just put in what you're drawn to, or wherever you are on your painting. You just do what you think is best. Okay.
Brilliant. So Sarum Hall School in North London, they would like to know who your favourite artist is, John.
Oh, that's quite easy for me to answer. I do believe that Van Gogh or Van Gogh was probably the world's most extraordinary painter, most extraordinary artist. Even today, I would say, I mean, he only lived until he was age 35. So it was a very short period of time, in a way, that he was able to put his vision down for us all. But the impact his paintings have today, the freshness and his ability to connect dynamically, instantly, and with real vigor, and to extract the essence of a subject, what makes it what it is. So rather than painting like a cornfield with every strand of corn, every seed, he managed to paint what it feels like to be in the cornfield. What does it sound like? What do the waves of wind going across the top look like? And for me, I think his work's it's still outstanding. And yeah, whenever I see any artists that get anywhere in that direction of painting the essence of a subject rather than the actuality, and that's what we're doing today. We're painting the essence. This clearly is nowhere near like a photograph. And I think that's far more powerful to connect to our hearts, minds, and souls. So yeah, let's go for Van Gogh. Amazing artist.
I'm sure lots of students and teachers watching will have learnt lots about Van Gogh during their school studies as well. The children of Millbrook School, like I said, they know that you're based in Cornwall, so they'd like to know where your favourite place to paint in Cornwall is.
Oh gosh, that is a hard one. Like I paint Falmouth a lot because I live in Falmouth, literally just one road back from my studio where I am now. There's the coast, and that's very inspiring. But I also do a lot of paintings of the north coast of St. Ives, which is very famous for artists, and it's got beautiful light. It's almost like a little island, like a peninsula. So I love that. I've done a fair amount of work at the Eden Project as their artist in residence, but it's a bit like, what's my favorite painting? If I've just gone on a coastal walk somewhere, then that will be my favorite place to paint, because it's, and I see the simplest thing. I might see a beautiful like stripy caterpillar and some sparkling sea behind it, and maybe some fresh campion growing, and that would be like, oh, that's like the best thing ever. I'm very childlike in my response to the world in that way, and deliberately so. But I try and keep that alive in me. Because I love the way a younger person will see something for the first time and be totally blown away by it. But by the time you're my age 56, you don't necessarily have to work at it. But I think it's lovely still to be amazed by the colour in an autumn leaf, or by the shells on the beach, and not just take it for granted, because none of that happens just because. It all happens because the world is in balance, or in balance enough to happen. So yeah, but yeah, I love painting the local coast where I am.
Amazing. So always taking inspiration from whatever you see around you, always look for new things, which is really exciting. Brilliant. So we have another question from Long Distance St Mary, and they've said, what inspired you to explore the rainforests around the world?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, when I was at primary school, I read a book and it was called Amazon Adventure. I don't remember the author. I should look it up. Anyway, it was aimed at children. And there was another one called Volcano Adventure. There was another one called like Safari Adventure. They were all adventure stories. But the Amazon Adventure one really stuck with me. The descriptions of the animals and the pink dolphins and the tapirs walking along the side of the river. And I always, as a child, I always thought, I'm going to go to the Amazon rainforest. I want to see this. So when I was doing my degree course in London, graphic design, I was awarded a traveling bursary from a television company as one of the top students in London that year. Anyway, I ended up going to the Amazon rainforest, which was extraordinary. And I spent 3 weeks traveling there. And I didn't get back. So I did that. That was fine. That was in 1989, shows how old I am. But I didn't manage to get back to the rainforest again until 2019, because it's not the sort of place you just go to sort of like just on a whim, really, and you need to know what you're doing. And I always want to do something good rather than just travel. Although I'm clearly not against travel, I think that can be really a very good thing. But I always try and achieve something to inspire people and take people with me. So but it goes right back to that book, reading about it. Basically the equivalent of this, but a literary thing. Somebody talking about the rainforest and how amazing it is. That stuck with me. And again, that's why I think Last Chance to Paint can have such a good impact on the young artists painting today. Because hopefully you'll remember this. You remember me, chatting on about the rainforest and bats and go, yeah, that's a good thing. And it won't just be, that's something I want to do. It won't just be, oh, I'd like to travel there. Hopefully you'll all know that I'd like to travel there because I appreciate how delicate that ecosystem is. I want to learn about it and maybe advocate for it. I think that's what will come out of this. I hope it does anyway.
It looks really fantastic, John. Brilliant. I hope everyone else's paintings are going just as well. I'm sure they look absolutely beautiful. We'd obviously love to see examples of your paintings, so please do share them with us once you finish today.
Yeah, on that point, yeah, if you're doing so today's, if you please, if you put them out on social media, do at Born Free In or at John Dyer Gallery or Last Chance to Paint, you'll find our social media handles, and perhaps Laura can put those in the chat box so you can see. But having some feedback, if you can share photographs, is great. And we will add those to our any images that you share. We can add those to our webinar page just to show what we're doing. But the big schemes of work, the Amazon project, the Borneo project, the African project that you can do over several days with videos, blogs, images. You can send questions into me. I will answer them, live-ish for you after a couple of days. You can submit your work to our World Gallery, and we've got something like 1,500 paintings on there already. And if the children of you do your own unique painting after one of those expeditions that maybe you can follow, we'd love to exhibit it on the World Gallery, and your paintings will bear witness to what we will risk losing if we don't get this right. Having said that, I think we should be super optimistic about the future, and it concerns me that children might think that that the ecology and the planet is in a desperate situation. And yeah, I'd be lying to say that it was great, but I'd also be lying to say that it's terrible. Nature fights back very, very quickly, given a chance. So we just need to stop demolishing it, and it will come back. It will come back richly, and it will come back quickly, and it will balance itself out. And we also have amazing technologies coming up, certainly in things like renewable energy, with solar panels and wind and tidal, and even nuclear has its place. It's a clean energy. I know there are critics of it, and rightly so in some areas, but we are moving towards, I think, in your lifetimes, in most developed countries, where there'll be limitless clean energy. And I think that's hugely positive. And then once we get to that point, I think then we can carefully start looking at farming and what we're doing and get more biodiverse, and with rewilding schemes, which are incredible. And again, my good friend Robin Hambury-Tennyson, his son Merlin, and you'll meet Merlin on the Amazon expedition if you run that with your class. Merlin is doing an amazing project, and his project is to replant the biggest rainforest in Cornwall and across the West Country, because you don't just get rainforests in the tropics, you get temperate rainforests as well. And you get cloud rainforests. So you get rainforests in Cornwall, very different, obviously. His project will span 1,000 years, is what he's currently fundraising for, to regrow and to get nature back. And there's lots and lots of really good stuff going on. So I think you are all going into at face value what the press or scientists might think is a disaster. However, if you all just tread as gently as you can and with your eyes wide open, sort of do this for the better, I think we can turn this around. And we are very, very good at adapting. So we're really good at adapting. And nature,
that's a really important message, John.
Yeah, nature's
for sure.
As well. So yeah, don't lose.
Absolutely.
Not lose hope.
No, don't lose hope. There's lots of reasons to be positive. There's also lots of amazing people in the world, around the world, working to help protect animals. So not only people here at Born Free, we've got the Orangutan Foundation, the Amberselly Trust for Elephants, all sorts of amazing organisations helping to look after wildlife and protect wildlife in their natural habitat as well. So there's plenty of reasons to be positive. And as John said, if we all do one small thing, it makes an absolute world of difference for the environment, for wildlife. Okay, we've got a few very quick questions. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yep.
So last kind of touches to your painting, but I'll ask you some really quick questions, John. So maybe some kind of single word answers, just to make sure we get through all the questions before the end. So Toucan class would like to know, what is your favourite colour?
Oh gosh, that's hard. Let's say red. I'm wearing red. I do like red. I think it's a very energetic colour. So yeah, red. Brilliant.
Just like your lovely butterfly. Fantastic. Is there anywhere else you'd still like to travel?
That can't really be a one-word answer, but I'll do some one word. Yes. So Canada, to look at sea life and the tribes there. Australia, looking at the Aboriginal communities and the ecosystem there. The Arctic, to work with the Sami people and look at the reindeer and how the melt and climate change is impacting what's happening there. And I want to look at very isolated Pacific islands who potentially will be the first to be lost by sea level rise and what's happening there, and on and on and on. So many subjects.
That sounds really exciting. Looking forward to all of those adventures, John. Fantastic. So LDSM again would like to know, how long does it take to paint one painting?
That depends. I could do a painting in a day. And if I'm in the middle of the rainforest or Kenya, painting of this sort of size, I would do just on the spot in about 3 hours, something like that. If I'm in the studio with a larger painting, it might take me a week or so, because the subject's not all around me. It's in my head and it's on reference photographs or drawings. It depends. But yeah, something like this I could do probably in 2 or 3 hours if I'm on site.
Fantastic. And our last question from Highfield, who has inspired you to paint?
Oh, well, that would probably be my father, who's also an artist. He's 84 this year, still just about painting, might do 1 or 2 paintings a year. And I guess growing up in a family with, in fact, my mum was also a painter, I guess that inspired me to paint. And then other influences come in on top of that.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for your fantastic questions. John, just any last things you'd like to say about your painting that you're finishing off now? It looks brilliant.
Well, yeah, I'm just putting another butterfly in here. Given more time, you can add some more light to it. So we might bring in a pale yellow, and I'll just give you an example. We might bring down some pale yellow down the side of the trees where the sun might be catching it. So you could do that if you've got more time in your class. Some of these lianas, we could put some more sort of color on there. So we could just build up the details in here. As we go, to sort of make it slightly richer. And I will do that in about half an hour. I'll do another half an hour's work on this. So it's a bit more finished. But broadly, I think this says Borneo Rainforest Bat Exodus.